Mr. Essen here, getting ready to be interviewed by Ross over here at 80's Everything Brew. Just super excited. Let's get going.
Yep. And question 1, how would you describe the 1980s in exactly 10 words?
Exactly 10 words is gonna be kind of hard. For me, describing the 80's would be fun, growing up, just, I don't know, it's just memories. That's all I can say. I don't know what else to say.
Okay. Question 2, is there something positive about US culture during that time?
Yeah, I think positive about U.S. culture. I think back in the 80's, I was kind of young in the 80's, but I believe they were pretty innovative with the technology that they were developing and the growth of the country. So I think that was pretty positive.
Okay. Question 3, so was there 3 of your favorite, so what were 3 of your favorite 80s candies?
Okay, so candies. So chocolate has all been the same, but so that's always been there. But candies, so they used to have Gobstoppers was one, and the Gobstoppers now taste a little different than they did back then, or at least in my mind they do. So maybe they're the same, but I just remember them differently. So Gobstoppers was one. There used to be these things called Tart and Tinies, and they were kind of like sweet tarts, but in these very small, like almost like little square pill form. They come in like a little box, and you can just dump those into your mouth. And then after that, maybe Bit-O Honey was like this, almost like a taffy, like this like sweet taffy type thing. I don't see those around very much anymore. So that's probably the 3 that I remember the most.
Okay. Question number 4, is there something unique about America during that time?
Unique? I think if anything, that's just in my mind. The 80's are kind of when America became the true superpower. Back then with Russia, there was this competition, the Cold War, and all that stuff. And I think what made us unique was just standing out amongst the rest of the countries in the world with a lot of the things I mentioned earlier, like the innovation and the development and the access that people in our country had that other countries, other people didn't have.
Amazing. Question number 5, is there any music that you really appreciate from that time?
I mean, the music, it's different. There wasn't so many specific genres of music like there are now. I mean, there was rock, and there was new wave, there was pop, there was even R&B. And back then, growing up, I loved it all, most of it. And you could hear most of it on the radio, whereas now it's very specific. What you hear on the radio is mostly what would be considered pop music. But there's just all these subgenres now that I feel like there wasn't back then. Or maybe it was because I was young and I didn't realize it.
Okay. Question number 6 is, what was your favorite 80s superhero?
I mean, growing up, Superman and Batman were probably my 2 favorites growing up. I definitely was more into those guys than I was, let's say, like Captain America or Iron Man or something like that. So, Superman and Batman.
Awesome. Question number 7 is, question number 7 is, question number 7 is, so question number 7 is, so is there a really funny memories you wish to share while growing up during that time?
I mean, I have a ton of great memories from that time. I mean, just growing up and just being young. I think one of the things that sticks out to me that I always find funny, even though back then I didn't think it was funny, I think it's funny now, is after school, my brother and I, my little brother, we would walk home, but we wouldn't walk home to my parents' house because we lived far away from the school. We would walk to my grandparents' house and stay there until my parents got done from work. So after school, we'd walk over there, or during the summer when we were off and my parents were still working, we'd stay there during the summertime, during the day. And one of the things that was always stood out to me was my grandmother. I seemed to be a pretty rambunctious kid, and there were a lot of days when she would get mad at me, and then she would make me go outside, and she'd lock me outside like as a punishment. And we had back then, my grandmother had one of those, we call them security gates now, but it wasn't like that. It was just a mesh door besides the front door, so you could look out and look in. And then she had like a little latch, like a little hook, and she would just send me outside and hook that, and then I would have to stay out there for what felt like forever, but when you're a kid, time is different. So, I mean, it probably was maybe 15, 20 minutes. But I can remember going up to the mesh, going like, Grandma, can I come in now? And so that was kind of, it's funny now. Back then, I was always sad and just like, oh, poor me, but you know, it's funny.
Question number 8, favorite video game?
So my favorite video game was probably Super Mario Brothers on the Nintendo, but that was like, I think I got that in '87, so it was just the last couple years of the decade. But that video game, I mean, I played the heck out of that game. But I also had an Atari, and I remember there was a game, the Empire Strikes Back game that I had. That and Pac-Man. I mean, everyone loved Pac-Man.
Mm-hmm.
And on my Atari, we had Pac-Man, and felt like you're at the arcade. And so playing that was like super cool too. So.
Awesome. Question number 9, favorite TV show?
I mean, I had a ton of favorite TV shows in the 80s, but the one I think that stood out that was like awesome, and it was something that even as a kid I loved watching with my parents, was The Cosby Show. There was just something about it. It was just different than the regular TV shows, and it was funny and exciting, and it was something that even me as a kid and my parents as adults, we could all enjoy it and laugh and have a good time. So that one was probably my favorite.
Okay. Question number 10. Is there any regrets about this era that you have?
I mean, for me growing up in the 80s, I don't have any regrets because I was a kid. So it was just part of my growth and development. So, I mean, for me, no, I don't have any other regrets.
Okay. Question number 11. Favorite 80s catchphrase?
I mean, there's lots of catchphrases. The only thing that stands out to me for some reason, I don't know why it stands out to me, is there was a Wendy's commercial called "Where's the Beef?" That thing stood out to me all the time, and it was this old lady, and one of my grandmothers kind of looked like her, and so it just became this funny running joke in our family with her saying it. So I think that kind of stood out to me more than anything else.
Okay, and the last question is out of all the years of the 1980s, what year would you say is the best to you and why?
Ooh, great question. I was 5 years old in 1980, so I was pretty young back then. So those days were kind of whatever. But I would have to say probably 1988, and mostly because '88, the Oakland A's went to the World Series, and I'm a big fan of them. I think it was 8th grade at the time, and so I felt pretty cool and like a big guy on campus. And so all those things were all like kind of just made '88 like pretty fun. So I think that's probably what stood out to me most was 1988.
Well, thank you so much for participating in this interview. And this is the end of the YouTube video. And guys, and sadly there was no microphone to this YouTube video. I couldn't find my mic. But please subscribe to my YouTube channel. And is there anything else you want to say?
No, hey, like and subscribe at the YouTube channel.
Yep. See you later, guys. Bye.